Okay.
She didn't fill out a card.
Good morning.
Turn on your.
Most of these meetings, you speak at the end rather at the beginning. So sorry for that. My name is Helen Roth Dowden, and I'm working with Nexus Water, which is an in-home recycling, gray water recycling that takes water from sinks and laundry and and is able to take that water, take it out of the home, recycle it in a tank-like small facility that's right next to the home, and then send it back in for either use in toilet flushing or for use on the landscaping. And this is a company out of Australia where they have lots of experience with saving water. And it's interesting because they use the heat exchange that happens with cleaning the water to actually heat the water in the tank. So they've been able to come up with both a zero energy solution and a zero water solution. And I know you've been with the big measure where you're allowing the 1% financing. We wanted to ensure that when you're considering all of these, that you look at the in-home solution as well as taking the water through the new plumbing and sending it out somewhere, then sending it back in. We found this is a very cost-effective solution. KB Homes here has already done a home down in Southern California that they're using as a showcase and is trying to do one in El Dorado, even though there are problems with whether the water has to be sent out to an outside facility and then back to the home. So we want to make sure that this in-home recycling is being considered as you move forward on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our financing goes for large public water systems as opposed to in-home financing. There are a number of technologies, vendors, others who are trying to promote things, and we don't actually have a great. The issue of gray water there is a statewide law, but it tends to be handled at the local level. But if you'll just step in with Ms. Turgovich, she'll connect you with. We have one person who's trying to figure out where to send folks who have ideas someplace they can handle it. And Fran,
Right, and I wouldn't have brought this up, but we heard from one of the water districts that they actually, when KB wanted to do a home in that district, that they wouldn't be able to do it under this funding, and that's why we
correct.
are
We
concerned.
cannot give our funding to a private sector.
Not to you, but it would be, they were working with a water district.
Right.
One of your water districts, and they were worried about using this as a
Right.
solution.
You
with
could
the
not
funding.
use it with our funding, but there may be other ways. So
Okay.
check in with Ms. Turgovich.
You can't use it, so even if the water district wanted to do it, or the sanitation district?
No, it's for large-scale upgrade of treatment works, publicly owned treatment works. It's just the way the SRF funding works. Just is.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? I'm pretty sure. Well, if I'm wrong, we'll figure it out. I'm pretty sure. Unless it's changed. Okay. Minutes. That's the April Fool's thing of the April 1st minute? That's pretty tricky to do that a couple weeks later. All right, board member reports. Which side?
Okay.
Well, I got eye contact over there.
I'm happy to start things off on this Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everybody. And, the Earth is the water planet filled with water people. And so I have to say something about that to celebrate Earth Day and encourage everyone either today or this weekend. Kind of like Mother's Day. You love your mother every day. You love the earth every day. But it's a chance to go out and marvel at what water does for people, what we can do with it, and to enjoy it. So with that, this last few weeks have been busy, and on April 4th, I participated in the California Water Policy Conference on a panel that discussed hydraulic fracturing and our program that's been begun this year under SB4. On April 8th, I had the pleasure of traveling with Chair Felicia Marcus to the South Delta and was given a tour of this by the South Delta Water Agency. On April 18th, I had a good meeting with the folks from Sonoma County. Their department is known as Permit and Resource Management, but it's another word for the conventional planning and building functions. And so we had a chance to talk about implementation of our Phase 2 MS4 permit and ways land use and water quality intersect. And finally, yesterday on April 21st, met with the general manager and staff of Santa Clara Valley Water District and had a chance to get updated on some of their forward-thinking master planning efforts. They already do a lot of integrated water management between groundwater, flood control, and water supply issues in Santa Clara Valley, working with cities, but they want to take it to the next level and look at ways that they can further integrate water resource management to create sustainability in the greater Silicon Valley area. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to say a thank you to Clean Water Action for organizing a couple of fascinating and very informative tours of oil fields and hydraulic fracturing operations. And so the Vice Chair and I participated in a tour in LA, and last week, Member D'Adamo and I participated in a tour in Bakersfield. Two totally different settings, different type of operations. So Clean Water Action and their community partners really did a great job in organizing that for us, and I want to thank them. Wanted to also report on an item that I think most of you have seen the press release for, and that was the last meeting, at the last meeting of the Central Valley Regional Water Board. The regional board adopted a resolution that would, I think, greatly facilitate the development and implementation of SEPs, supplemental environmental projects, in disadvantaged communities. One of the things that is fairly evident since we adopted the amended SEP policy in 2009 is that there's a great deal of challenge in for some of the dischargers to define and develop and implement SEP projects in disadvantaged communities. And what this resolution did was it doesn't preclude anyone else, but it authorizes the Rose Foundation to reach out to communities, develop projects, and then these projects would be offered as part of the enforcement discussions when that happens. It was developed in close conjunction with some of the environmental justice groups, and so I was very impressed by the discussion at the board meeting, but also by the level of enthusiasm and interest that it raised in the various types of groups in the area. And so I met with Chris Kerrigan yesterday, and we'll be following up with financial assistance staff. But I would like to explore us doing something on a statewide basis, drawing from the cleanup and abatement account, because we don't actually do enforcement type activities, to see if there's a way for us to do a similar kind of arrangement, not necessarily with the Rose Foundation, but a way to just facilitate the development and implementation of projects that perhaps relate to priorities such as groundwater, nitrate, drinking water in disadvantaged communities. And then happy to work with you on that. Great. And then a heads up for Tom, really. One of the things that I would like to pursue, especially with the coming of the new fiscal year, and I know you're starting to talk with the regional board's executive officer and assistant executive officers, and also heads up from Ms. Turgovich, who's now back in the room, about developing targets for next year's performance report. I've greatly appreciated the efforts today on the performance report, and I think it's been institutionalized now as part of our operations, but I would like to see us turn the corner and take that next step towards outcome measures. I think we're focusing a lot on output measures, and that's fine to start with, but now is the time, and especially with the budgetary changes associated with Gamma and SWAMP, moving from well, from bond and other funding, general funding to to fees. Let's take a look at, how those gamma and swamp ask the question of what data is being collected, how does it actually reflect the outcomes of our activities, and link it to hopefully an advancement in our performance report, shifting us to that next level of performance measures. So just a heads up that that's something that I will be seeking your assistance on, especially with the MCC, the AEOs, and the roundtables. I've met with the TMDL roundtable and asked them to brainstorm about how the performance reports could be more meaningful, more useful to them, and I like to do so with the other roundtables as well. ARP and Rafa and you, Karen, have done a great job, but I think it's time to take that next step.
I attended the San Diego Region Board meeting this year, or this last month, and two big issues. One is a long-term issue. The shipyard's sediment cleanup. It's been going on for roughly 20 years or more. Finally got a settlement. And Chris was there. Chris Kerrigan was there. And anyway, it's quite wonderful. They reported that they divided the cleanup into two parts, and the southern part has been done. And the northern part has now started. As of the board meeting, it hadn't started, but it started the next week. So it looks like we will get a cleanup in the next year and a half. So that's very, very good news. The second is something that I'd already shared with Tam, but I want to share it with everyone. Region 9 has been working for the last 2 years on what they call a unified beach monitoring. And what that has resulted in, it's been a 2-year collaborative process with stakeholders, both environmental groups, Sierra Club and others have been there, as well as the POTW in the area. This is in Orange County, POTWs as well as stormwater folks. And they have taken 12 sites where there were overlapping monitoring stations and have collapsed those overlapping stations into one site. So instead of the stormwater folks collecting and the POTW collecting information, now there's just one collection of information. In addition, and it kind of gets, it's one of those win-win-wins, so they have reduced the number of sites that have to be collected from, but they have gone to once a week, year-round monitoring. Some of the permits called for for half the year. Some called for the full year. Some had 2 days a week. Some had 1 day a week. Now it's all uniform, 1 day a week, and but it's year round. And there are triggers, uniform triggers on both the stormwater side as well as on the POTW side for taking another sample if there's a problem. And for the first time ever, there's also a trigger after several samples haven't worked for investigation. That, again, is new to the permits in that area. So they will have to go in and change some of the permits to allow for all of this, but by September it should all be in place. Anyway, it was very exciting, and it fit in with the cost of compliance and efficiency. And in terms of cost, the speculation was, it's hard to say. Probably won't cost more, but it's better. And it might cost less, and we'll find out. So anyway, that was very good. Secondly, there was a chairs meeting. All 9 regions sent the executive officers, and the chair or a representative of the chair attended the meeting. Tom was there, and Michael was there, and Nettie Sablehouse from the governor's office, as well as Martha Guzman from the governor's office, came and spent most of the morning with us. Gordon Burns came from Cali, PA, and spent lunch, a fairly long lunch with everyone. And it was a good discussion about everything from compensation to how much time the board members are spending to issues like climate and outreach and budgets, and it was a very, very good conversation. But the most important thing is that a final decision was made on the date for the WQCC, which is the date for when all the regional boards members come in. It'll be October 2nd and 3rd. That's a Thursday and a Friday. There'll probably be an optional activity on that Wednesday, but the main the main focus will be on Thursday and Friday. And finally, I was part of a panel that the Public Policy Institute of California held on financing and here in Sacramento, and it was interesting to me that in the wonderful work that they do, they had not even thought about the revolving loan fund as a financing option for water projects. It was interesting. So now they are thinking about it.
Well, that's good. Okay, so I too was at the California Water Policy Conference in Claremont. I think a lot of us were, and I spoke on, not all at the same time, yeah. But I did sneak in and view part of your presentation, noting that I was the only other board member, and then I also observed the fracking presentation, and I have to say that fracking presentation was just the panel was fabulous for such an emotionally charged issue. I think the moderator did a really good job of just teasing out good questions, and there was a really good dialogue. Representative there from the industry, Kern County Planning Commission, of course, Steve, and then what am I saying? The environmental, I can't remember the name of the group. But anyway, it was a very, very balanced, and I learned a lot from that presentation. Anyway, the panel that I was on agriculture and drought, and I think that the most productive part of that conference was sort of the sidebar discussions that were going on about groundwater. Everybody was talking about groundwater. On April 8th, I attended the Groundwater Resources Agency day here in Sacramento, and spoke about groundwater and the Water Action Plan and drought. And Eric Oppenheimer was also there, and I know he addressed the group. Liz Haven also participated in that event. On April 15th, I spoke at a forum on groundwater at Cal State Stanislaus. And the focus there was some efforts that are underway in Stanislaus County to start the beginning process of a groundwater management plan. And then I have to thank Member Dodig for being the travel agent for a couple of real interesting tours. So I joined Tam over in Region 3. We went to Diablo Canyon, Paso Robles, had an ag tour and a meeting, real good discussion with two groups that didn't get along in the past that are now having some very good productive discussions. The Rural Residential Coalition that's formed, Farm Bureau, and then the county was represented there as well. We took a tour, and it was just real interesting to see all the increased plantings, and of course the economic activity that's gone on as a result of all those crops going in. So it was helpful to be on the ground firsthand to see things. We met with Region 3, had a real good discussion with senior staff, the executive officer, and the chair, Jean-Pierre. And they joined us, Ken and Jean-Pierre joined us on the tour at Diablo Canyon. And I have to say, Tam, I really appreciate the way you reach out to the regions going on these tours, because then the tour that you organized with Clean Water Action over in Bakersfield, and Region 5 participated in that tour as well. And I think it helped us to have a better dialogue with some of the officials there from Region 5 that have been working on the fracking issue and other oil production issues. I'm kind of jumping around, but then also as part of the Region 3 tours, Gail Delahant with Western Growers organized a small ag tour for us, and we visited Bonnie Pack, which is a vegetable grower shipper harvesting operation. And so we were able to see some of the harvesting going on and had a real good discussion with folks about sort of their on-the-ground efforts moving toward best management practices and testing not just the soil but groundwater. They have an on-site laboratory, and they were seeing that things didn't really play out the way they thought. And so we encourage them to get involved with the expert panel because they'll be looking at these issues starting in May.
Wow, that was all great. In addition to things people have already mentioned, we did a lot of team tours this time. That's really good, I think. The Water Policy Conference in South Delta, et cetera. Mentioned just a couple other things. One is that the Delta Interagency Implementation Committee met for the first time. This is a committee called for in the Delta Reform Act of 2009. It is coordinated by the Delta Stewardship Council. It's something that I've been eager for them to do for quite some time. It was good. Les and I went, and it was a good convening of many of the agencies that deal with the Delta, with an initial discussion about which issues would be best for us to focus on together, where the group focus would be most useful. Science, of course, comes out as one that seems obvious. There were discussions of other things. I'm looking at Les about levees and flood protection, but there's one other issue in particular. Oh, financing, right. The big one that everybody puts off till later. So stay tuned on that. It's something where maybe pulling everybody together will get something to happen sooner versus it being punted down the field, and this is a good year for talking about it. But that was good to see, and Randy Fiorini, the new chair, did an excellent job putting it together and running the meeting. We had budget hearing in the Senate. I think that went okay. We'll see. Some things were held off, but staff did a tremendous job preparing for that. It's a lot of work, and this is the first year I've been a part of them, and I'm very impressed. So I just want to say my thanks publicly. I spoke with a number of groups in the North Bay Watershed Association, which is one of these associations of North Bay area, the San Francisco Bay Area groups that have come together voluntarily to figure out how to more efficiently deal with a watershed approach to their work. It was actually a great group, and the Marine Conservation League, which is always a nice group to go see, and I hadn't been there in about 15 years, so it was great to see some of the same people, but also a lot of new people, and very inspired. Actually, the best award ceremony I have ever been at, and I like award ceremonies, but it was completely inspiring, and if it's online, I'll get you a link to it because it was just terrific. A number of us were here for the groundwater workshop earlier late last week, run by the administration. Karen Ross chaired this one. It was great, and a continuing focus on groundwater from all kinds of unlikely allies, and an astonishing convergence of opinion from people across the spectrum. And so work continues on that. And then on drought, I just want to say a thanks again to Tom and so many of the staff who have been working round the clock on drought issues, working round the clock, not really because they have to, but because the consequences of this drought to people, but also to fish and wildlife, are going to be devastating as the summer wears on. I just want to thank everybody, apologize for any extra demands I've put on you, though that will not stop. We're all working really hard, and also a special thank you to Board Member Diadamo, who has just been doing heroic work as well, getting out in the field and talking to people, which I think is something that we all really need to be doing. The drought task force, next meeting, this is the more formal grouping with the head of the Office of Emergency Services, I think Mark Cowan is going from DWR this time rather than Secretary Laird. Secretary Ross and I will be heading to Visalia on Monday, which is kind of ground zero for a number of the impacts, just for a variety of reasons. And so I'll come back with reports on that at the next time. I suspect that one is going to be even more emotionally charged and challenging than Merced was, simply because the depth of the impact there is going to be devastating. So I'm glad we're going to get down there again. I think that's it. Or I'm probably forgetting something, but time to move on. All right. Now we're to uncontested items, and I don't know if it's contested, but I know one of them has a discussion. Do we? Yeah, and we've gotten comments on that. So can I take items 3 through 5? Do I have a?
Madam Chair, I will move items 3, 4, and 5.
And the only thing I would comment is there was a change sheet on the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory item 4.
Change the number.
That's correct.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? There you go. Those carry. Let's go to item number 6 then. Is staff going to present first?
Yeah, we have Connie
Yay.
Mitterhofer is here to.
And
This
Connie,
is consideration of proposed resolution delegating authority to approve funding and to execute agreements regarding interim emergency drinking water supplies to disadvantaged communities. Some money was allocated in the budget, the drought budget, for this activity, and Connie will present.
terrific. And Connie has taken on the task of being the fielder for ideas such as the gray water idea that came up earlier. So she's fielding these and figuring out where to send them and how to help people who have all these ideas, which is a pretty heavy task. So thank you. I hope some of them have been really inspiring, but I know it's a heavy load and I appreciate it.
Hello, Chair Marcus and members of the board. We really didn't have a presentation for you. We did get a comment letter, and I think Mr. Correa wanted to comment on the item, and we're certainly here to answer any questions that you have.
Right, but you've already had some discussions about this. I apologize for not finding all the emails from Friday. You had these spool in the iPad. They were all spooled behind something I thought I had just marked as unread. So my apologies. I did 2 of those yesterday where I was wondering where answers were, and they were there right away from Friday. So, but you all have done a fair amount of work trying to figure out how to deal with the very good suggestions that Mr. Correa sent in. So you might want to
Yeah, I'll just say that
give a summary so
Yeah.
he doesn't have to say it and then respond. So.
I just want to thank John as well as Nathan for preparing the change sheet to respond to some of the issues raised by the comment letter that we received. And I think the chair is right. You might want to just briefly walk through some of the additions to the resolutions in the resolve section.
Okay, I'd be happy to. The primary change was a little while ago, probably within the last year. We had, the board had allocated $2 million from the cleanup and abatement account to California Department of Public Health for interim drinking water supplies. When we did that, or when the board did that, we modeled the requirements of it after CDPH's Prop 84 requirements. In the implementation of this, we found out that that was probably a little bit too restrictive to tie that funding to those requirements. And the bottom line is we've only been able to get out about $100,000 of that $2 million. So we, our proposal, the main proposal is for staff to go back, take a look at that resolution, see if we can ease up some of those limitations, such as well, some of the Prop 84 things, and make it more available to people who need it. When the legislature and the governor allocated the $4 million from the cleanup and abatement account, the language was written very expansively, very almost generically, to allow us to implement various things almost at our discretion, as long as they were tied to contamination. And well, that was primarily it. And it loosened it up a little bit to make it both man-made contamination and naturally occurring contamination. So we have a little more flexibility with the $4 million, and that's really what we want to do with the $2 million, is revisit that, see if we can make that funding more flexible, and then in 3 months bring that resolution back to you with some proposed revisions.
All right. 3 months just because you think it'll take that long, or you would
It could
come
be
sooner? Okay.
That was just a ballpark
All right.
estimate. And if we can do it
But you
sooner,
can
we
use the 4
certainly-
million now, so it's not, I suppose it's not whatever, but okay.
Yeah, certainly what we do is when requests come in, we look at where they might best be suited. Somebody might say, I want to apply for this, and just this is across all of our programs. We say, well, really this other program we have is more suited. Let's go that route, or we suggest that you go that route. And then the other things that came up in comments is the item was originally just an administrative delegation of the authority, increasing the amount of money available to the deputy director and the executive director. And that was done primarily because the drought is such an urgency measure. We didn't want to bring, or we didn't feel we had to bring every single project to the board. We felt that you had enough trust in our discretion that some of the lower dollar projects, we could speed up the time getting that money out the door without having to bring those to you. And if there is a controversial item or something, we'll certainly bring it to you for that. And then the third one is just a reaffirmation of the board's interest in really us coordinating with the various, anybody basically.
Anybody who can help us?
Yeah, anybody and everybody to try to see who we can help with this funding.
Right, you mentioned in the our email exchange that one of the issues was trying to figure out how to use it for domestic well owners who are in trouble, and you mentioned there are a couple of limitations on what we can do, which doesn't surprise me, but what are those limitations? Or is that something you still have to figure out?
Well, fortunately, I have Nathan here to help me with that, but there are
That's
some legal concerns with the gift of public funds,
Yeah.
giving money directly to private individuals. But there are also some issues in allocating fairly small dollar amounts to a lot of individuals, not really having the administrative resources to set up such agreements. However, we have been working to try to figure out if there's a way to go through either a not-for-profit or public agencies to help those individuals that are in need.
Yeah, I don't have anything more to add to that. I think she covered it.
There you go. You could play a lawyer on TV now. Well, thank you for the work, and thank you, Tam, too, for the engagement. So, Mr. Carrillo.
Let's see. Hello? All right. Omar Carrillo, Community Water Center. We just wanted to personally thank staff and the board for all their hard work in getting this program going. We felt it important to put forward the letter that we submitted, and I know it was really late, so we apologize to staff. They probably had to work overtime over the weekend to try to adjust to that, because the letter just went in last week, and we appreciate that. But we felt compelled to put our thoughts on paper, primarily because we are on the ground, and we've been working with a previous similar type of funding. We've identified some kind of critical kind of roadblocks, but also areas for opportunity that will allow for this funding to be successful and get the funding out ASAP. And a lot of it has to do with just kind of providing that flexibility, having the right community partners. So it's not just Community Water Center, it's also other organizations, Leadership Council, it's groups in the Salinas and Monterey area who have come forward and said, let's make this work, let's get the money out. And so for the most part, that's what I wanted to do with kind of just addressing you, and also, like I said, thanking staff and continuing to look forward to working collaboratively so that the next time we're here and talking about the subject, we say the money's gone. You know what I mean? And that is really what we want.
The money's gone, let's get more.
Let's get some more. Exactly. Perfect. All right. That's it. I thank you very much for, and I'm willing to answer any questions if you have them for me. Other than that, I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Right. Thank you for your help. That's great. It's a great partnership.
And may I add something?
Yes, absolutely.
So we've also in the process of launching an extensive outreach program to help us get the word out. If I understand it correctly, OPA is releasing a press release today. We have a fact sheet drafted that we're intending on using, sending out to the counties and local health departments. We also have a new webpage that will go live after the meeting, providing that the item is approved. And we have every intention on getting the word out through funding fairs and everything else to try to maximize and see if we can't get the other money out as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the great work. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Right.
And that's moved with the change sheet, right?
Right.
Yes.
Now, did you just think of that, or was his beginning motion? What? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it carries. Thank you. Great work. Right, Mr. Howard, item number 10. 7.
Number
I know,
7,
I see
yes.
it's 7. I'm sorry. I need coffee. But you don't have to go get it. But I like,
So we're into the information items.
that's a
and,
Monty Python thing to do.
ongoing drought update. Les Grober and his staff will be providing the update.
Good morning. We'll have a team presentation today from Division of Water Rights, and also we have a team presentation today from Division of Water Rights and also from DFA. We'll introduce folks as we move along. I'm going to start with an update, and my name is Les Grober. I'm Assistant Deputy Director for Water Rights. I'm going to start with an update on hydropower, but also principally on the continuing update and amendment of our temporary urgency change petition order for Delta operations. That's continues to be active in the month of April, and I'll be focusing on the month of April. We've made 3 updates so far this month, starting on, and I should say, and this is really an outgrowth of continuing meeting of the real-time drought operation team that I participate in with Craig Wilson, the Delta Water Master, and that's with meeting with the Department of Water Resources, the Bureau of Reclamation, and all the fishery agencies. And the intent is to continue to track the changing hydrology, the changing needs, and to identify what, if any, changes might be needed in operations to really optimize the use of water in this dry year. So on April 8th, that was a milestone. We received a collaborative effort. They prepared a drought operation plan to get us through the rest of the year that identified the suite of activities for the joint operations, and it also expressed the concurrence of the fishery agencies and just how do we kind of make the adjustments that we need to make. On the heels of that then, that was on April 8th, we received on April 9th a petition to request some of those changes from the department and USBR. And we issued on April 9th an order approving elements of that petition, which continued some of the delta outflow adjustments into the month of April. And just a couple of days later, in response to a follow-up request, we also approved changes to San Joaquin River flows. And once again, that's one of the adjustments to trade off the water supply with fishery protection. And then just last week on Friday, we received, in response to another request, there was interest in how do you, again, make the best use of that water that's being released in the San Joaquin River from the Bureau, from New Melones, but also other transfers that could be in play from other tributaries. So it allowed for the continued one-to-one exports of San Joaquin River flows in the Delta, which would be ordinarily approved under D1641 and also the BIOPS. But now that we're in an off-ramp in terms of delta outflow, we're not meeting all of the delta outflow requirements, so that was another approval, and that assured then that, and again, nothing is optimal for just one purpose, but if flows are being released in the San Joaquin River Basin for fisheries, it's not making it all the way out, but at least that water can be exported and used. So it's continuing to strike a balance between water supply and fishery and environmental protection. So those have been the major elements of that, of the updates to the plan so far. Looking forward, the drought operation plan had, again, that suite of activities that included as part of it, at that point, still anticipating potential use of drought barriers, rock barriers, to provide that barrier to salinity intrusion rather than the hydraulic barrier that's normally provided, again, as a measure to save water. But also this last Friday, as part of a number of announcements from the department, it looks like at this time those barriers will not be needed, which is good, but it means they're going to be asking also for further adjustments to salinity standards in D1641. So that's something that we will be looking at over the next week, and we intend before the end of the month to issue another order working with Tom. These are all orders that have been issued by the Executive Director, Tom Howard. We're going to be looking at the information that's going to be submitted by the department and the Bureau with regard to, again, the trade-offs of changing salinity compliance locations in the Delta and making our needed findings and providing a conditional approval of some request. This is going to be more difficult because we're looking now at a trade-off in terms of they also announced on Friday increased water supply, a 5% allocation to state regular contractors. So in light of that, they're also looking at, well, still the trade-off in terms of water supply and fully meeting water quality standards, how do we strike that balance? So one of the specific proposals is an Edmonton standard, and rather than meeting salinity at that location, meeting it somewhat further inland. But that has an effect on salinity throughout the Delta. That and other things that in play include also not meeting a certain number of days of a Contra Costa chloride standard. So those are all things that we're intending to review at least for the next couple of months in this upcoming order, as well as now that we have a better idea of what the hydrology is, it's settled down for the long, dry summer without the changes, the storms that we're thankful for, but made things difficult and changing over the last month. Responding to all the comments and objections that we've received over the last few months and the several changes of the order. To date, we've received about 45 comments or objections, several of them multiple from some of the same entities because they've been responding to various changes here. So we're intending to respond to all of those things, look at the order more collectively in terms of all of our findings. Again, we've so far been doing this piece by piece to look at it more holistically. And then after that, we've already sent out a save the date for a workshop, tentatively now for May 6th. We're going to identify if that's going to be the day that we move forward with. And if that's the case, we'll send out a notice later this week. So that will then be an opportunity after this next update, the more comprehensive update to the order. It'll provide an opportunity for a workshop and comments before the board. So that's enough. Are there any questions so far on the temporary urgency change in that process? Okay, and then just a couple more words on hydropower. We're continuing to get and respond to any requests similarly to the temporary urgency change, if it has to do with a FERC license, relaxation in requirements, again, to strike the balance of, the uses of water. We're continuing to work on and participate in the governor's hydropower work group. And I think that's enough with that. With that, I'll turn it over to, if there are no questions, to Amanda Montgomery. She's the manager of the permitting and licensing section to talk about transfers and other TUCPs.
Great. Thanks, Les. So today I'll give an update on the other urgency changes that we've been receiving and also the water transfers. I'll start with urgency changes. We maintain a list on our drought webpage of all the urgency changes that we've received and their status, if you're ever interested. Since I updated you at the beginning of April, we've received 2 additional urgency changes. The first request was from Hidden Valley Lake Community Service District up in Lake County. And they divert from 4 wells that pump groundwater underflow of Puda Creek. They request relaxation of a term that's in their permit and in their license that requires them to augment flows into Puda Creek during low flow periods from July to October. The purpose of use of the water is municipal, and they say that the drought has reduced their groundwater supply, so their well levels are quite diminished. So we're working through that urgency change. The second urgency change request we received was from Malacha Hydro Limited Partnership up in the Pitt River in Lassen County. And that party holds a permit to allow direct diversion of water for the purpose of power generation. They're asking to relax a minimum bypass flow for fisheries purposes from 50 CFS to 25 CFS, and also to change their direct diversion right to allow temporary storage. And we're working on that urgency change. As far as existing requests that I discussed last time, we're continuing to process an urgency change from El Dorado Irrigation District to modify their wastewater petition order in regards to fisheries-related releases. And in addition, I mentioned last time that we have a urgency request that's also coupled with a water transfer from Merced Irrigation District. That request was initially made back on March 20th, and they amended it to include, that was for one license, they amended it to include another license. So now includes 2 different water rights. What they're asking for there is to relax fisheries flows in the Lower Merced and also to reduce their reservoir minimum pool. If the change is allowed, it would make more stored reservoir water available for use. The water would flow into the Merced River to help fisheries, and then most of it would be consumptively used for MID customers for irrigation. Of the 30,000 acre feet of water that would be freed up, 5,000 acre feet is proposed to be sent down the Merced River, then into the San Joaquin, up to the pumps, and then the final destination would be San Luis and Santa Clara Valley water districts for that transfer. That transfer would also help fisheries as being a spring pulse flow. So we're working on that one, and that one's fairly close to action. Could be today or tomorrow. I'll next transition to water transfers.
Sure. Just a quick question on that. We know that there have been these 45 protest objections or petitions on the temporary urgency changes to the Delta, the ones that Tom has done that have achieved more of the general awareness. Have we had any protest objections or petitions on any of these other temporary urgency changes?
We likely have. Let's see. So I'll have to screen my memory for all the ones we've received. We've had several for Yuba County Water Agency, and I know, just looking at my emails this morning, on one of those, I think it was the long-term, there was 3 different Yuba County Water Agency ones, but one of them, the state water contractors, wanted to add a term in there to that change, and my understanding is Yuba County is supportive of that. So we are adaptive when issues have come up after the fact. Typically, urgency changes are noticed after action, and then we receive comments in, and then we can revise. An example of that would be Sonoma County Water Agency. There wasn't actually, we received a number of comments, but we also had board interest in revising that one for conservation term.
Okay.
So,
That's right, because I see the letters back.
Right.
People, I just haven't seen many.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to
Thanks.
transition to water transfers. So just like we have for our urgency change requests, we have a table on our website that tracks all the 2014 water transfers and the status of staff processing. It has in it the date we received it, the date we noticed it, our target date for action on that water transfer. As I mentioned it during my update at the beginning of April, coming up next Tuesday on the 29th, we have a listening session that we're holding with Department of Water Resources staff to solicit public input on water transfer streamlining. So just ideas from the public on how to streamline water transfers. We have been working closely with Department of Water Resources and USBR and the fisheries agencies, meeting every 2 weeks to talk about water transfers and ways to streamline and to solicit input on coordinating these water transfers. But we want to make sure we reach out to the public and listen to them. So that joint listening session notice is up on our drought webpage. We have not received any new transfer requests since I last updated you in April. So that's not to say we don't expect more, but we just haven't received them yet. We are continuing to process transfer requests from 2 in-Delta water transfers from reclamation districts 2026 and 756. And the destination of the water is Semi-Tropic Water Storage District. The public noticing period closed, and we received 8 comment letters. 4 were from parties that will receive the water and are in support. 2 were related to environmental concerns regarding waterfowl habitat. So basically the fact that they're going to fallow quite a bit of corn in the Delta on these islands, and so concerns that the waterfowl or the birds wouldn't be able to use that habitat. And then the last two letters were from Department of Water Resources and U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, who are other legal users of water in the Delta that have some concerns about those transfers. Currently, staff is reviewing the comments, and our target action date for that transfer request is next Monday. So, since I last updated you, we did issue an order granting a transfer from Placer County Water Agency. In addition to providing a source of water for East Bay mud, it also provides flows beneficial to fisheries in the lower American River as part of the American River Agreement. So with that, I'm done with my presentation, and I'll transition to Connie Mittenhofer unless you have questions for me.
Maybe we can talk offline afterwards, but I have some thoughts about the listening session
Great.
that I'd like to talk with you about.
Sure. Thank you.
Good morning again. I'm just here to provide a brief update on our role, my unit's role. I work in Division of Financial Assistance and responding to some of the drought suggestions that have come in through Felicia and other board members from both the public as well as private vendors and companies. So at the beginning of February of this year, the Governor's Office set up a small interagency team of individuals with water expertise to evaluate and respond to these ideas and direct them to the appropriate agencies. So the team is made up of a few individuals from the Governor's Office, the Office of Emergency Services, the Department of Water Resources, the California Public Utilities Commission, as well as the State Water Board. The team met the middle of February to discuss the general process for receiving and handling these ideas. And as a result of the meeting, Cal OES set up an email box to track these ideas, developed a general flow chart, as well as some template responses. The email box really serves as a central repository for tracking ideas, and the type of response really depends on the type of inquiry, if it's a member of the public, private company, investor, or other agency. So to date, we received about 20 inquiries through the board members, and an additional dozen from Cal OES that they asked us to evaluate. The majority of the inquiries have been suggestions for either new treatment technologies, water conservation ideas, or some products, though we've also had some individuals that were just interested in promoting desalination or water recycling. So we've taken some time and going back and calling them, and then if appropriate and if they wish, we sent them some information on either our program pages, water recycling. Oftentimes, there is a need to explain that our funding programs aren't really geared towards funding private companies or investors, but we do take some time to either send them to the CFCC, the California Financing Coordinating Committee, or coming up with some ideas in terms of having them work with a public agency if appropriate, and then they could come in for funding request.
It's a follow-up, really, on the conversation that Felicia was having with the woman who spoke earlier. Is there any place where a public agency, not private, public agency can go for financial assistance with streamlining gray water activities?
Yeah, we've taken note of that, and I will be talking with my supervisor, Julie Rizzardo, and our recycling, water recycling folks to see if there is a possibility for that. We've definitely taken note, and we'll be in touch with a person.
I don't know this particular product. I don't know anything about it, but I do know that the county of Marin is there's an effort going on there, and possibly Sonoma may join with the county, the Sonoma County and Marin, to facilitate the use of gray water, and so it seems like it's something we need to be on top of.
Yeah, I think as a public agency, that would certainly be eligible for funding. Whether or not it would fit the water recycling criteria, I'm not sure about, but that's definitely something we will work on.
It might fit criteria for something else, so the trick is where to find it. What was the gray water legislation that passed recently. When I was in Marin at these meetings, a number of people were sort of impatient. They were happy about that, but I'm afraid I didn't know what passed like last term on gray water.
I actually think it was about 3 or 4 years
Oh,
ago.
it's
maybe
like
even
3
older
years
than
ago.
that
Well,
at
that's
this
why
point.
they're impatient, I guess. But
And what it did was updates to the Uniform Plumbing Code that allowed a certain number of fixtures in a house not to have to go through any additional special permitting process.
oh, okay, good.
And it was fixtures such as what she was recommending, the washing machine and shower, I think.
Yeah, there were different, I mean, also the kitchen sink, I believe, was an option that was available, but there are limitations. You can't do all three. You can only do one. So,
Gotta catch up on that. Thank you. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
That was pretty much my update. Unless you have any questions for me, I'd like to pass it on to John O'Hagan.
Terrific. Well, we want you to keep a list of the most interesting and amusing suggestions you've gotten, and we'll talk about those in private.
Good morning. I'm John O'Hagan. I'm the manager of the enforcement section for Division of Water Rights. I have a little presentations for dealing with the status of the water availability and potential for curtailments of water rights. I thought I'd give you an idea of the rainfall conditions. I'm sure you're aware of it, but these are DWR graphs of the precipitation in the 8-station index, which is the Sacramento Valley. This year we're up to 26.7 inches. Average is 50. And the 1976-77 drought was at 19. So we did have some good rain in February and March. The San Joaquin, it's at 16.3 inches for the 5-station index. The average for that is 40.8 inches. The 1976-77 drought was 15.4. So roughly we're 50% of average in the Sacramento River watershed and 40% average in the San Joaquin. In reservoir storage for the Sacramento San Joaquin, we're at about 26 to 54% of capacities in the large reservoirs. In the Kings River system, if you look at Pine Flat, that is probably the lowest. I think it's at 27%. There's one other one that's at 26. So that's just to give you an idea of available storage and also the precipitation. We utilize the data from the Department of Water Resources on its forecast, and we get an updated monthly forecast for the months from them in their bulletin, as well as we chart a daily estimate of their natural flow forecast, and that's what we are using on our curtailment analysis for supply for each of the watersheds we're doing. And we have now posted our curtailment analysis and curves on our website. They were posted last week, and they're available at the website shown on the screen. And I'll go through some of what's on that website for curtailment. These are the watersheds that we have summaries and curves available for the parties who are interested in them. We have a basin-wide Sacramento San Joaquin watershed basin-wide summary and supply and demand information. We have, for tributaries in the Sacramento San Joaquin, we have a curve for the Stanislaus River, Tuolumne River, Merced River, Yuba River, and we will have up hopefully this week, a upper San Joaquin watershed above Merced River confluence. In the Tulare Lake Basin, we have curves posted for Kern River, Kings River, Cahuilla River, and Tule River. For the coastal streams, we have curves and summaries for the Russian River, Eel River, and a Salinas River will be posted shortly. This is an example for the Sacramento San Joaquin curtailment information that we have on the website. This is taken directly of it, where we give a projected curtailment date So between May 15th and June 1st, we are projecting that there may be a need to curtail all post-1914 water rights. Between June 1st and June 15th, we will have to start looking at junior pre-14 water rights. As you recall from my last presentation, we are looking at water right priority with the senior most rights on the bottom, and then stacked on top of them are the junior rights as they go up by priority date for post and pre-14 water rights. After June 16th, we may be curtailing additional pre-14 water rights, and riparian rights would have to share correlatively with the available supply. That is the information that is posted and available for each of the watersheds, and they're in the same format. This is a typical analysis curve that we have done in which the types of right that I described are stacked in the red, yellow, and blue, which is the demand curves. And we have two supply curves, the 90% exceedance curve that the department provides us and the 50% exceedance. Along with that, we plot the daily on another graph that shows today, are we above the 50% number or are we below? And what's happening in some watersheds, we are above the 50% on a daily plot. For other watersheds, we're someplace in between the 90 and the 50% exceedance. So as it comes towards the end of the month, we will figure out on those things what is the best curve to use as we get down the line. Okay, these are what we consider we have pending curtailments. For the Yuba River, post-1914 rights with a priority of 1929 or later. Merced River, all post-14 water rights. Tuolumne River, all post-14 water rights. Stanislaus, post-1914 rights with a priority of 1943. And these particular watersheds or tributaries are looked at and graphed separately because of the high priority high priority of water rights that are right at the major reservoirs. Tulare Lake Basin, Kern River, all post-14 water rights. Kings River, all post-14 and junior pre-14. Kaweah River, all post-14 and junior. Tule River, all post-14 and most junior. That's right now.
Just one quick, remind me again, pre-14 water rights that are junior it's the chronological order in which they came into our system?
Yes, we are relying on the dates that parties reported first use of water as their date of priority. If someone wants to correct their report or amend their report, they can always do that on the ERIM online reporting system and put a new version of the report in, but we would have to go back and look at that. We did find some that do not have a date on them, and we're contacting those parties.
To find you written records? Is that what you're asking for?
What's that?
Are you asking them for written records? Is that what you asked them for when
Well,
you don't
we're
have a date?
asking for the date that is missing on the original statement that was filed. So we're trying to get that information if we have it missing. Because that, otherwise we'd have to research it ourselves. So we're first asking the